All right, we can use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out if we have a right triangle, an acute triangle, or an obtuse triangle. Now, a right triangle, you should remember, has one angle that measures exactly 90 degrees. An acute triangle has all three of its angles being acute, meaning they measure less than 90 degrees. And an obtuse triangle has one angle that measures greater than 90 degrees. All right? So the rule is, you're going to take, if it's a right triangle, you're going to take your Pythagorean theorem, take your two smaller numbers, put them in for a and b, and see if that equals your bigger number squared. If it does, then you have a right triangle. So all you're doing is using the Pythagorean theorem and seeing if it worked. If it's acute, when you plug in your two smaller numbers for your a and your b, after you add them together, they're going to end up being bigger than your big number squared. All right, so it's a little bit counterintuitive because usually when we think of acute, we think small. And then the opposite of that, if when you add up your two smaller numbers after you square them, and it's less than your hypotenuse or the big number squared, then you'll end up with your triangle being obtuse. All right, so let's see this in action. All right, so let's try example 1. We'll do 7, 8, and 9. All right, so we know that the a and the b have to be the two smaller numbers. So in this case, my two smaller numbers are 7 and 8. So I'm going to do 7 squared plus 8 squared. And see, does that give me 9 squared? All right, I'm going to put a little question mark. All right, well, I know 7 squared is 49, and 8 squared gives me 64, and 9 squared gives me 81. My question mark? So we have 49 plus 64. If I add 40 to 64, I get 104, and then add 19, that gives me 113, and 81. Now, which way is my Pac-Man pointing? He's going to point to the bigger number. All right, so in this case, this triangle is not going to be a right triangle, it's not going to be an obtuse triangle, it's going to be an acute triangle. Okay, because when I added up my two smaller numbers, after I squared them, it ended up being bigger than my big number squared. All right, let's try another one. All right, let's do example 2. We'll do, let's see, 3, 4, and 6. All right, so again, my a and my b have to be my two smaller numbers, so I'm going to do 3 squared plus 4 squared, and does that equal 6 squared? Question mark. So we get 9 plus 16. Does that equal 36? My question mark. We end up with 25 and 36. All right, so my Pac-Man is pointing to my 36. All right, which tells me I have an obtuse triangle. Oops, obtuse. All right, last one. Example 3. Let's try 3, 4, and 5. All right, so my two smaller numbers, 3 and 4. We'll have 3 squared plus 4 squared, and does that equal 5 squared? Put my question mark. All right, so 3 squared, 3 times 3 gives me 9. 4 times 4 gives me 16. And 5 times 5, I get 25. Okay. And does 9 plus 16 equal 25? Well, yes, indeedy it does. So it's a right triangle. Okay, so just to recap real quick, when you add your two smaller numbers after you square them, like we did here with the 7 and the 8, and if you get something bigger than your third number squared, then it's acute. When you get something smaller, like we did in our 3, 4, and 6 example, it ends up being obtuse. And when your Pythagorean theorem works out, meaning you get the same number on both sides, you know that this is a right triangle.